Elias Cord is standing on the sand at 4 in the morning, the machine behind him cold and ticking in the January air. He is 52 years old, and everything he has built for the last 4 years is sitting on 4 narrow wheels. His father made clocks in Montpellier, and Elias grew up knowing that precision was the result of patience applied to small things. He left at 19, farmed 40 acres with Clara Hatch, and they ran it for 22 years. Clara died in December of 1902, a Tuesday. 2 years earlier, Elias had watched a steam automobile pass through a county fair in Vermont so quietly the horses didn't flinch, and he had not forgotten it. He sold the farm in March of 1903 for $1,100 and headed south with his tools and Clara's books. What he told the land agent was that he had a project. He found a barn on the Tomoka Road, 8 miles from the beach, a citrus farmer named Voss. No questions, rent on the first. Elias paid 6 months in advance and moved his tools in that afternoon. The boiler arrived on a flat car from Jacksonville in February 1904. A 32-inch marine boiler specified himself, by letter, over 4 months of back and forth with a machinist named Patterson. The chassis was cut down and re-welded 3 times before Elias was satisfied, the low silhouette drawn on a flour sack the week after Clara died. The engine, 2 cylinders, direct drive, no clutch, no gearbox, steam into torque, into speed. Amos, a Jamaican man picking fruit for Voss, started helping on Saturdays in 1904. No invitation, no arrangement. He simply appeared with a rag in his pocket and his sleeves already rolled. Amos had worked the docks in Kingston and understood things under pressure. He never said the machine would work, and he never said it wouldn't. By summer of 1904, Elias could not have imagined building it without him. First steam came on a Thursday in September 1904, the gauge climbing with a patience Elias found almost unbearable. When it reached 400 pounds per square inch and held, Elias sat on a crate and did not speak for 2 minutes. He ran the machine on the Tomoka Road 3 times in the fall of 1905, at night, no headlamps. On the 3rd run, he held it open long enough to know the road was the limitation. That was the night he decided on the beach. He lit the firebox at 3:15 in the morning of January 26, 1906, Amos beside him in the dark. Everything depended on arriving at the beach with the pressure still climbing. Before we follow Elias any further, if this is the kind of story you've been looking for, subscribe to the channel. Every video here is built around a real car, a real road, and a life that changed somewhere on the asphalt. No filler. If that matters to you, the subscribe button is how you tell us. And leave a comment. Have you ever stood beside something that took years to build and understood in that moment that the building was never really about the thing itself? Now, back to Elias and the beach. The 2 miles to the beach took 31 minutes. Elias nursing the pressure at 200 pounds, the kerosene feed low. The Atlantic arrived before he could see it, salt and cold, and then hard sand was under the wheels. 4 officials from the Automobile Club arrived at 6:30 with a measuring wheel, a brass stopwatch, and a certificate of record. They looked at the machine for a long time before any of them spoke. The flying mile was marked with flags above the tide line, confirmed twice by a man named Eldridge. Elias walked the whole course in silence and came back and adjusted the throttle stop without speaking to anyone. He is reclined nearly horizontal in the cockpit, the throttle lever beneath his right hand. The relief valve opens at 650 pounds per square inch. He will run at 600. When Elias lifted his chin, Amos raised the flag to shoulder height, held it 2 seconds, and dropped it. Elias opened the throttle in one steady motion, and the machine left the mark as quietly as something ready for a very long time. At 20 miles per hour, the machine is nearly silent. At 40, the wind becomes the loudest thing. At 60, the machine begins to feel inevitable. At 80, the front wheels walk slightly on the wet sand. A shimmy, Elias reads through the wheel rim, not through the seat. He feeds more pressure, trusting the calculation the chassis can hold it and this sand will hold. He passes 100 miles per hour and the beach has become one continuous event rather than a sequence of points. The vibration has shifted from warning to information, a deep resonance moving through the seat and into his hands. At 115, the rear of the machine begins a slow lateral conversation with the sand. Elias does not lift. At this speed, lifting is the moment everything becomes uncontrollable. He thinks of Clara once, at a speed he cannot name, a door swinging open and shut in the same instant. What a person makes is never about the thing, it is about the making. He holds the wheel. The machine crosses 127 miles per hour in the last third of the mile, a frequency Elias knows from the flour sack drawings, not from any instrument. The flags at the end of the measured mile appear, approach, pass. He slows over nearly half a mile, no real brakes, just the throttle closing. When the machine stops, Elias sits in the cockpit with the boiler venting softly and does not move for a considerable length of time. The official read the stopwatch and wrote, 28.2 seconds for the flying mile. He looked at Elias and said, 127.6 miles per hour approximately. Elias said yes. Amos arrived a few minutes behind, put his hand flat on the hull the way you put your hand on a horse's flank after a hard run. What he said was, the hull didn't crack. Elias signed the certificate, Elias C. Cord, Ormond, Florida, January 26, 1906, and the official folded it into his case. The record was official. The machine was done. By noon, the boiler was cold, and Elias sat on the hull, ate the lunch Amos had brought, and watched the Atlantic go about its business. He walked around the machine twice and found nothing broken and nothing bent. The record appeared in 2 Florida newspapers the following week, and in neither of them was the name Cord spelled correctly. Elias filed both articles in Clara's trunk and wrote no letters of correction. He drove the machine back the following morning, Amos walking beside it. The barn was the same barn, but the trip back felt different, the way a room feels when the thing it was built around is no longer in progress. He parked the machine in the center of the floor, shut the barn doors, and stood outside looking at them for a while. The grove smelled of oranges and the road was quiet. Letters came from collectors, from other builders in their own barns, with their own boilers, and the particular certainty that lives just past what anyone else considers reasonable. Elias wrote back to the builders and not to the collectors. Amos left for Kingston in March, and Elias drove him to the Ormond station in a borrowed buggy. Amos shook his hand and said, "You'll know what to do with it." Elias didn't ask which it he meant. A collector named Holt arrived from Boston in July in a linen suit and spent 40 minutes examining the machine without touching it before making an offer. Elias had known since April the machine would be sold. He signed the papers at Voss's farmhouse table and watched Holt's men load the machine onto a flat car at the Ormond freight dock. He watched the flat car until it was gone from sight. He kept renting the barn 4 more months, not because he needed it, but because he was not ready. The space where the machine had stood was marked by oil stains, 4 axle impressions, and a black ring from 3 years of kerosene. He rented 2 rooms on Granada Avenue and set up a bench, a clock, a gate latch. The clockmaker's son, finding his way back to small things after one very large one. He went back to the beach twice, walked the measured mile, found nothing left to mark where the start had been from the finish. The sand lay there unmarked, identical to the 5 miles on either side. The record stood until 1909, when a factory-built racer ran past 150 miles per hour on this beach before losing control. The driver walked away from wreckage that should not have allowed it. Elias thought about the distance between 127 and 150, which is a distance of physics and of something else entirely. He lived on Granada Avenue 9 years, making clocks and latches and small implements for a local cooperative. He was not prosperous and he was not unhappy. In 1916, Elias moved to Gainesville, where a nephew named Webb had machine shop work for a man who understood precision. He worked there 6 years until his eyes made close work difficult, and then retired to a room on Depot Avenue. Holt's Boston collection was destroyed by fire in 1921. A recovered manifest confirmed the Cord steam racer had been transferred to a private buyer in New York in 1918. What became of it after that is not recorded. Elias Cord died in 1929. Webb cleared the Depot Avenue room and found the flour sack drawings in Clara's trunk, kept the trunk, and did not keep the drawings. This is the kind of thing that happens to most things. The beach at Ormond is the same beach. The sand at low tide is still hard enough, in theory, to run something very fast across. If you had a machine and a reason and 3 years in a barn on the Tomoka Road. The tide comes and goes, and the surface it leaves behind remembers nothing that has crossed it. If these road stories are what you want to keep watching, subscribe to the channel. More cars, more roads, more lives lived behind a steering wheel that meant something. And if you ever built something that took everything you had or drove a car that was more than a car, tell us in the comments. What car, what road, where it took you. The cars remember everything. So do the people who drove them.